All righty, so good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to see you all here today. I hated to break up some of the great conversations we were having in the hallway, but I promise this will be another great conversation, and we'll certainly let you get back to the folks out in the hallway after this session. Thanks. So my name is Carly Gardner. I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions here at Delaware Law School. It's my pleasure to welcome you here today for our Accepted Applicant Community Day. I want to start by congratulating each and every one of you on your acceptance to Delaware Law School. Yeah, I like that. I thought I heard a little clap. I like that. I also want to thank you for taking the time to be here with us today to learn more about us. We know that choosing a law school is a big decision, and we're here to help you hopefully envision yourself here with us at Delaware Law School. I do want to take a quick minute to thank my staff for helping put really this whole Accepted Applicant Month on, but also this day in particular. I'm joined here by Eric Niskern, who you're going to meet kind of in depth in a minute, our Director of Recruitment and Diversity Enrollment Initiatives. I'm also joined by our new Director of Admissions, Steve Fiduk, our admissions counselor, Heather Hope Curavilla, who's probably running in the background, and then our admissions support specialist, Haley Redding, who has been manning the front door, as you probably all met when you're coming in. Our staff, we love what we do. We love helping all of you reach your goals and help you through this process so you can launch your legal careers. And so it's really just a joy to match faces to names today and to have you all here with us. Just a few quick things about today before we get rolling. You should have received a folder at check-in. In that folder, you're going to find an agenda, so you see what's kind of coming this afternoon, some other good information in there. You'll notice on that agenda, we're going to start things off here with a faculty panel, which is going to be a great conversation. Followed by immediately, back out in the atrium so you guys can grab another refreshment, continue those conversations you may have started with our staff, our faculty, our students out there. And then we're going to wrap things up with a campus tour. Our student ambassadors are standing by and can't wait to walk you around in the beautiful weather we have today. We were so lucky, no rain. So for those of you who weren't able to join us earlier this month, I also wanted to let you know that our virtual accepted applicant events, all of those were recorded, and the recordings are now posted or are being posted on our website. So whether you were able to join us or not, I really encourage you to take a look at those. I think that, again, whether you joined us live or you're just going to kind of join us for the recording, that those perspectives, that advice is so valuable now and through the summer as you're kind of preparing to join us in the fall. I have to be honest, their presentations kind of made me want to go to law school all over again. So for that reason alone, I suggest that you go ahead and watch them. And then finally, I know some of you have already paid your seat deposit, which we're thrilled, to know that you're going to be joining us. For those who have not, just be reminded that the the seat deposit deadline is April 1st. And you should have all your information you need on how to go about doing that. And again, we hope that you're going to choose to join us. So, about 15 years ago, I sat in the same position that you're all in. I actually sat in this same courtroom. I think I was up in this section over here. Hopefully that story is enough of a clue that I am a very proud Delaware Law alum, in addition to my role here as the Assistant Dean of Admissions. I practiced for several years after I graduated. I still maintain my pro bono practice representing kids in court. And I give you that context so that you know that I mean it when I say this. Delaware law is going to give you the tools that you need to succeed. Again, I know that because I've lived it. Our innovative curriculum, our esteemed faculty, and our practical skills training are truly going to help you reach your full potential. And I think almost more importantly, our supportive student body, our alumni network, the support you're going to get from faculty and staff here, that community is really what's going to help you reach your goals. I hope that that's been on display this whole month if you've joined us for other events, and I know it's certainly going to be on display again today. I can't emphasize enough the value of a law degree, really the value and the versatility of it, really no matter what path you choose. And I know that's going to be part of our conversation actually today with our faculty and our deans. So they're going to share a little bit about their journey, their perspective, the power of a legal education, and hopefully again, so you can start to envision yourself here in law school at Delaware Law School. I know we have a lot to get through today, so I want to turn things over to our Dean Todd Clark, to welcome you before we kick things off, and Eric's going to facilitate this wonderful conversation with faculty. So thank you again so much.
Thank you, Bob. Good afternoon. I got really excited when I walked in here earlier and I saw all of the amazing people, students, parents that have joined Delaware Law School to have this conversation today. So I know that all of you are very serious because there are two NCAA tournaments going on right now, and I was watching it a little bit just a second ago, to be quite honest with you. So Alabama is still up by 7, but they're in a close one with Robert Morris. And I was keeping track of wrestling as well because I'm a big wrestling fan. So a really exciting time just to be alive, and exciting time to be here at Delaware Law School. So I want to make this very clear. Delaware Law School is an absolutely special place. There is no other place that I'd rather be in the world than right here at Delaware Law School, working with our students, faculty, and staff. And I want to tell you, so I'm going to get you guys acclimated to the experience already. As the Dean of Delaware Law School, I have 2 responsibilities. The first responsibility is to make sure you pass the bar the first time. So we have a saying here. When I say we will, my students say pass the first time. So we're going to try this together, students. We will. Again, we will. Now, those are more than just words. When you say pass the first time, there are things that you have to do and that you have to be committed to doing to be successful here at Delaware Law School. And if you notice that I said we will, each one of you said we, because this is a team and you cannot be successful unless everybody in your organization is successful. We're going to work together, we're going to fight together, and we're going to push to be the best law school in the country. And that means a lot. That means a lot to our faculty as well as our staff, and it will mean a lot to you. So it is a we, not an I. The next thing that I have a responsibility of doing is making sure that you get a job. So I'm gonna just throw this out there. If you end up at a large law firm in Delaware, does anybody have an idea what the starting salary is? Let me ask some of the parents in the room. Parents, and keep in mind, I'm still, even though I'm a dean, I'm still a professor. So we use the Socratic method here. So we don't typically answer questions, we ask questions. So one of my parents, any idea about what the starting salary is at some of the large law firms here in the state of Delaware? First year out. Great guess, 85,000. Anybody else? Say that one more time. 200, try about 215, and that's base salary. When you add in bonuses, you can be in anywhere from 260 to 270, and that is a graduate that walks right off our stage, passes the bar the first time, and then begins their workplace experience in August of the year after which they graduate. You have an amazing opportunity in front of you. Delaware is a very special place, not just the law school, but the state of Delaware is really unique, and to the extent that we live and occupy the second most powerful court structure in the world. And some people don't fully appreciate that. And this is the reason why. 68.2% of America's Fortune 500 companies are incorporated here in the state of Delaware. So what that means is that anytime there's an issue that impacts the internal affairs, whether it's an issue between directors and the board, the shareholders, or the officers, Delaware law will apply. And often those cases are litigated here in the state of Delaware by our distinguished Delaware alum. And so because corporations control the overwhelming majority of wealth in the world, this makes Delaware a very important and special place. And we have a very important set of courts that help administer justice in those cases. So you will have access to that. So that makes Delaware a really special place and the opportunity to earn a great salary. The other piece of it is we're also unique to the extent that about 40% of our students come from and take the bar in the state of PA. We have about another 30% in New Jersey, about another 25% stay here in the state of Delaware and practice, and then 5% probably just go elsewhere, whether it's Maryland or New York, some other Ohio, those types of places. And so the great thing about that is we have roots and we have connections all across the country. So there are Delaware law students that you can reach out. We have about 13,000 Delaware Law School alum across the country. That is a network that you can tap into. Again, there is no other place that I'd rather be. Our alum are so amazing, and they love to reach out to you and hear from you and connect with you. And so I'm excited that you're here. I'm even more excited for the prospect that you will be my student. And I'm even more excited for the fact that if you come to Delaware Law School, you will pass the bar the first time, and we will work our butt off to get you a job. So parents, keep that in mind when your child is deciding whether to go to Delaware Law School or some other place. Send them here because you have a dean, a faculty, and administration that is committed to helping your child grow to become the best version of themselves. So with that said, I'm going to sit down, and I'm excited about our panel today. And thank you very much for joining Delaware Law School.
Thank you, Dean Clark. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Good. As Carly said, my name is Eric Niskern. I am the Director of Recruitment and Diversity Enrollment Initiatives here at Delaware Law School. I have worked for this law school in the admissions office for 26 years. You'll be my 26th entering class, and it's just as exciting this year as it was my very first year. So I'm thrilled to welcome all of you here today to get to know us and hopefully leave with a positive view of our law school. This afternoon, I have the honor of having a conversation with members of our faculty. And this isn't the typical faculty panel that you see at a lot of law schools. We're not going to talk today about all of the amazing publications and great things that they do outside of the law school, which they do. They do amazing things outside of this law school. We're going to have a conversation today about what they're doing here to make sure that you all get to be, hopefully in their position someday, practicing law, doing whatever it is that you're passionate about. As an example of the kind of community that we have here at Delaware Law School, last night, I had the pleasure of moderating a panel of affinity group student leaders on campus. Some of you may have been there last night. If you weren't, I highly recommend that you watch that video. It'll be available, I think, sometime next week. It was more, what I had asked the students to do was talk about their student organizations, what kind of services they provide, the benefits of being a member of those organizations. And what they really did was celebrate each other. Rather than talking about their own organizations, they talked about each other's organizations. And they talked about the community that they provide for one another, the support they provide to one another. They celebrated each other's successes instead of their own. It was an amazing experience. And again, I cannot recommend enough, watch that video when it comes out next week. I guarantee you will deposit at this law school if you watch that video, because I would come to this law school again after watching that video. You guys have a lot to live up to today. So with that, I'm going to ask each of our professors to briefly introduce themselves, a little bit about your background. We'd love to know your educational background, your path to law school. Obviously, all of you went to law school. Just to get to know a little bit more before we have our conversation. So I'm going to start at the far end with Dean Kelly. Let you go.
So, good afternoon. I'm so excited for you all. I really am. I taught this morning from 10 to 2 a bar boot camp, which is like an intensive bar training for people to be successful in the bar pass. And I asked the students in that room the same question that we get to ask Dean Clark and I. So I'm the vice dean, and we go to speak to people at orientation. And I say, like, how come you're here? Like, tell me why. What's your why for being at law school? And there's this amazing range of answers, right? I want to help other people. I want to have this transformative educational experience so that I can help my family and support myself and have a positive impact on the development of law and serve other people. It's a service industry, these amazing answers. And so you're just like one step away from that right now, right? You're starting to think about what your why is. So I'm really excited for you. It's an amazing journey. And, you know, it doesn't stop with law school, of course, then it just continues on in another form with your amazing opportunity to do career development. But you want me to talk a little bit about myself?
Yeah, tell us who you are.
So let me say, so I have been at the law school for more than 20 years. I am also a first-gen lawyer in my family. I'm not first-gen college, but our students are about 85% of our class are first-gen law, and about 30% are also first-gen college. And I'm very passionate about that group of people. We all are. I think it's part of like the cause or the mission of the school is to support that community. And I'm proud to be a part of it. We actually have quite a lot of people on the faculty who are first-gen law and also some who are first-gen college. So we understand the opportunity for things to really transform your lives when coming to law school. And so that's why we do so much of what we do here. I'll tell you a little bit about my journey. I'm a Temple law grad, Temple undergraduate. I graduated from college in 3 years. I always knew that I wanted to go to law school. Since I was like 12 or 14, I knew I wanted to go to law school. And I thought, you know, I get to pursue this dream, and I've known that for a long time. A lot of people don't know. I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, but I had a pretty good sense of it. And so I think you also asked us to talk about whether we worked during law school.
Just, yeah, your path to law school, how you got there, yeah.
So when I was in law school, so I come from a family of, I'm one of 4 children. So there's 6, but we had 2 foster children for a lot of time I was growing up to for 6. And we had, you know, like what used to exist, a middle-class family, right? So there was not a lot of money, but there was enough to be okay. And, but like I had to pay my own way through school, and I had to work during school. So I actually created my own house cleaning business. I'm Irish Catholic. I was raised Irish Catholic. So cleaning is like how you have control over your life. So I had that business and I knew it was really gonna be helpful because I could control my timing and my schedule and make pretty good money in a short period of time. So I definitely worked during law school. And then eventually I got to get some law related jobs in the summer and was a law clerk as well. So I'll stop there to give up.
Great, thank you. Dean Colhane.
Hello. How is everybody? I hope you're enjoying this. You know, it's basically impossible to follow Dean Clark, but I'll do my best. So I've been at the law school since around the time the Earth's crust cooled. You know, since 1987 AD. So I have a lot of perspective and I've done a few visits at other law schools, but primarily I've been here during that time, teaching in the areas of family law, constitutional law, and my first year course, which is torts, which I'll talk about in more depth in a few minutes. So my dad was a New York City police officer. My mother started life as an executive secretary in New York, but I'm sort of quasi first generation college because my mom went to college after the three of us were back in school, community college, and then 4-year degree, and then she became a school teacher. And certainly first generation law. I went to William and Mary for my undergraduate degree in Williamsburg, Virginia, where I studied philosophy and English. I did not have to take out a post office box for the job offers that came in with my philosophy degree, but it was what I wanted to do, and I was really very committed to it. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do after college. I was thinking about journalism. I was thinking about philosophy, grad school, but I was always thinking about law school at the same time. I took a year off to consider my options, worked for a newspaper, and then decided to go to law school. Went to Fordham Law School in New York, and subsequently worked as a law clerk for a year and then 3 years at one of these big firms that the dean was mentioning, although it was in New York City, not here. That really wasn't for me. I mean, it's a lot of people love it. I mean, it's a lot of hours, but if you really like the work, it can be a great career. It wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I've been here for a long time, and I really love teaching our students. There are so many things that happen outside of the classroom as well as inside of the classroom. So I was coaching a moot court team. I was happy to be on this panel. I'll be judging a competition, a moot court competition in a few weeks. I'm advisor to the law review here at the law school, and there's so much that goes on outside of the classroom as well as inside. And I really feel as though the faculty here is very, I don't feel it, I know it, very committed and dedicated to student success. And so I'll stop there, but I'm glad to see so many of you here. And afterwards, I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can for you.
Thank you. Dean Clark.
I just want to say that both Dean Kelly and Dean Colhane are like two of our best, and they are just so committed to students. And it's really humbling just to be in their presence because they are really, really good at what they do. I mean, Dean Kelly, she just has a really unselfish concern for all of our students, and she's always trying to go above and beyond. Sometimes I'm like, wait a minute, you're going a little bit too far here. And we argue a little bit. And then Professor Colhane is one of our most amazing professors at connecting with students. Last year we were at this event and I felt really frustrated because he was talking about what he did in class and I'm like, oh shit, I'm not that good. And so it's super impressive. It really forces you to step your game up. And then this is one of our junior faculty superstars, Professor Zhang. But just a little bit about me. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, born and raised, big Ohio State Buckeye fan. Went to a small liberal arts school in Ohio called Wittenberg University. And then I went to the University of Pittsburgh School of Law for law school. And then I did an MBA at West Virginia University. I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer very early in my career. And like Dean Kelly, I'm also first generation law and first generation college. And I knew that this was something that I wanted to do. And then when I finally got an opportunity to practice law, I knew that I didn't want to continue to practice because I also worked at a large law firm. And one of the things that large law firms make great money, you could do some cool things too, but that work comes in through a partner who takes the piece off that she wants, and then she gives it to the junior partner and he takes off the piece that he wants. Then the junior partner gives it to the senior associate and she takes off the piece she wants. Then the senior associate gives it to the mid-level associate and he takes the piece that he wants. And then you are the new associate that gets the work that 4 or 5 other people at the firm didn't want to do. So you get paid well for it, but sometimes it's not as engaging and it's not as exciting. And sometimes you just don't feel that sense of like, am I serving justice? And so I knew that I wanted to teach, and then I moved into that area. And then I was fortunate enough to transition into administration and then became the dean at Delaware Law School.
Thank you.
Well, as Dean Colhane said, it's very hard to follow Dean Clark, but I will try. My name is Professor Zhang, and very new. I just started as a faculty member here this year. Dean Clark and I didn't talk about it during my interview process, but I went to the University of Michigan. So
Probably good you didn't bring that up during your interview. Yeah.
that's a problem. Anyway, so I grew up in Michigan. Part of my life. I also grew up in Connecticut for the earlier part, but so I went to Michigan State School, and I've only talked about this with some of you, but my dream as a child was to be a concert pianist. So that's what I did in college. But along the way, I knew part of the reason why I love music was I loved serving my community. I loved going to senior centers and performing for people and feeling like I made a difference. And as I went through college, I realized that was actually the key for me. So as I was thinking about what to do later, I ended up deciding, well, I actually want to make that my core thing. So I did a year in AmeriCorps, went back to Connecticut where I had done my elementary school time. I spent a year working with refugees and immigrants through an AmeriCorps program. That was fantastic. And I discovered I was going the right direction. I wanted to do public service. And I discovered law as a great way for me to match up that passion with my skill set. And I am someone that really likes reading and writing and then problem solving. And I saw the lawyers in my agency doing all of those things. And I thought, that's the job I want to have. So I worked as a legal assistant for a year, then came to law school. And luckily, I have not regretted that choice. It's been a fantastic career. And I then, as some of these others have mentioned, ended up wanting to come back to law school again, but this time as a teacher. And that's been fantastic. I was fortunate to have some privilege in that my parents were highly educated, but I was a first generation US citizen, at least, born in this country. So that came with a different set of challenges. And while my family was well off, certainly getting to law school, I was the first one to be an American lawyer. It's a whole new culture in addition to my family integrating into American culture, but law is its own mini subculture. And that was definitely something that was new to me and I had to learn. And I think we might talk about some of that later, so I'll leave that for later, but I'm so glad you're here. So excited to share more about what we do here at the law school.
Thank you so much, all of you. So one of the things many of you said, you talked about being first gen in some form. And for those of you that may not know, roughly about 85% of our student body are first gen law students, and roughly about a third are first generation college students. So it is very much a culture here where our students are the first of the people that they know to do this. And I'm sure those of you that were first gen, there's a lot of things about law school that's intimidating because you don't know an attorney, you don't know what to expect. I thought torts was a dessert until the first day of torts. So I'm also guilty of that. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what intimidated you the most when you went to law school and where you found the support to actually make it through. Why don't we start with Dean Kelly?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was allowed to go talk to my professors to ask about substantive rules of law or like real world problems that were coming up. Like I was curious, we know now, and you'll have this experience as soon as someone hears that you're in law school, all of a sudden you get all sorts of, requests for advice, no matter what your area of expertise is. I teach family law, wills and trusts, and elder law, so you cannot imagine how popular I am at cocktail parties. I was afraid to talk to my professor, and I remember talking to one particular one, and I got an A+ in his class, right? And I was still afraid to go talk to him, and he was just so unbelievably welcoming and warm, and I just didn't expect that. I just thought that there was this wall between students and faculty. And, that's true at some schools. It's really, really not true here. So that was one thing that I also just didn't know a lawyer. I didn't know a single lawyer. So I had no idea how to do like job development and networking. And, I figured that out.
Yeah. What about Dean Clark? I'm going to come back to you, I promise.
Yes,
I try to shake things up a little bit.
I share the same sentiment that Dean Kelly mentioned. As a first generation student, like when you had challenging experiences, there wasn't anyone that I knew with whom I could relate. Very similar as well. I was telling someone the other day, I think that I went to a professor's office one time the entire time that I was in law school. I mean, that just wasn't the culture. I think that Delaware Law School is the antithesis of that. Like, we want you to be in our offices. We expect you to be in our offices. And in fact, a lot of students spend a lot of time in my office. And so we definitely have a embracing community. And I could tell you one of the other experiences for me when I was in this class we called it legal process, but it was essentially civil procedure. And I had no frame or frame of reference or context for that. And luckily we had this program called the Mellon Program for, minority students. And it was really helpful. There's a gentleman by the name of Kevin Deasy, Professor Deasy, and he was probably one of the most important people in my life during my law school experience because he was really accommodating. He worked very closely with the students in the program and helped us acclimate. If we had questions, we could talk to him. If we wanted to know what classes we could take or should take, he would talk to us. And he just had a really calming and even-handed personality.
I'm curious, Dean Colhane, if you could talk a little bit about maybe how your experience being a first-gen law student, if at all, informs the way that you teach our students and the way you approach that.
Yeah, I can talk about that. Part of it is kind of the assumptions you might make about what students bring to law school in terms of background and, educational experience. And so I just start from the premise that, many of the students, probably most of the students, don't have lawyers in their family or don't even know lawyers that they've spoken to about the law. And so kind of understanding where the students are coming from, especially in a first semester course. I teach torts, which is not only a dessert, but also the main course. The best subject in the first semester of law school, in my humble opinion, having taught it forever. And in case you don't know, I'm not going to assume everybody knows what a tort is. It's kind of civil liability. So anytime one person sues another person for negligence or defamation or sues a corporation for a defective product, all of that is a tort law. So I start with sort of an understanding that if students feel comfortable in the classroom and feel as though we're kind of in this together and they can ask questions as I proceed through the material, it makes for a really nice classroom environment. And I start out slowly, just a couple of cases for the first week or two until the student, because a lot of it is like learning a new language, right? There are all these terms and all of this, even understanding how a case got to where it is, right, requires some explanation, let alone the facts of the case. So I really try to kind of work our way into the semester, and I find that to be helpful. I know when I was, I think it was toward the end of my third week of law school, I'm driving somewhere with my dad, and he said, "What do you have to do when you get back?" And I said, "Well, I've got to brief some cases." And I thought I was just describing things, and up until then, I didn't feel very intimidated. And he looked at me and said, "Wow, isn't that intimidating, knowing you're gonna have to do this for the next 3 years?" That kind of burst the bubble. And then suddenly I thought, maybe this is harder than I can do, right? But it really isn't. You have to kind of let yourself, I don't know, just be engaged, right? And if you're interested in the material and you're interactive with your classmates and your professor, that's most of it. And also the work, you really have to do the work. I mean, there's no substitute for it, but it's manageable. And we can talk about work-life balance sort of later, but it's doable, and it can really be, I found law school to be a tremendous amount of fun, to be honest with you. I really enjoyed it.
In fairness to Dean Clark, because we all saw you poke him with the stick. Do you want to talk a little bit about first-year contract? There's a little bit of a back and forth
Yeah,
between
you
which
know,
is better towards their
This is what
contract.
Dean Colhane did to me. Like, you see how he just gave this great discussion about courts, and it's like, oh, wow, that seems like a great class. Well, that is the second best class that students take in their first year, next to contracts. Contracts is the sexiest class. It's exciting. It's really fun. Every day that you walk, you enter into a contract, whether it's a contract for a service, whether it's a contract for a good, whether it's a contract that you just have between someone to do something. So I think that contracts is such a wonderful course. And one of the things that I try to do in that class is I try to make the material relatable. And I try to break it down into bite-sizable chunks so that students understand it. And one of the things that I do is that I really give people not just the law, but help them to understand the why. So like if I walk into class, what's your name? Corbin. Corbin? So if I walk into class, now this is what you guys didn't know. You see Corbin's nice phone? Hold your phone up, Corbin. So this phone, Corbin said that Dean Clark, you are such an amazing person. I just think you're special. I promise to give you this cell phone when I leave this session for today. Now, Corbin, did you say that? Yes, you did. Now, I said that Corbin said it. Corbin said that he didn't say it. How many of you believe that Corbin agreed to give me that phone? Ooh. Okay. See, I like you. You already admitted, but I like you already, right? Now let's think about this. The reason that you said, what is some of the reason that you said that you believe that Corbin did not make that promise? Anybody? You didn't hear it, right? You didn't hear it, so you don't believe it, right? What if I said, would you be more likely to believe me if I said at the end of this session, Corbin would sell me the phone for $200? Would you be more likely to believe that? Yeah. Yes. Why? Because there's an exchange, right? He's getting something for something. What you just don't realize if you just learn one of the most difficult contract concepts in first year contracts, that is consideration. Because the idea is in that first example, there was no exchange. And so there was nothing that he considered receiving in exchange for getting something back, right? Or giving up in exchange for getting something back. But in the second example, when you recognize that he was getting something and I was getting something, he was giving up something and so was I, you are more likely to believe that there was an agreement. That's consideration. So in my contracts class, I spend a lot of time breaking things down in a way that people can appreciate and understand. And trust me, that is one of the more difficult concepts for first year students to appreciate, but you did just appreciate it in a very short period of time. Now, when I teach you more laws, it gets more confusing, but then you come back to that. What did the person consider in deciding to enter into that transaction? And for him, it was the consideration of receiving the couple $100 in exchange for the phone. That was the swap.
Sexy. Thank you. So next, I want to talk a little bit about work-life balance. You sort of touched on that because it's very easy in law school to be too focused on the work and not on maintaining a good sense of mental health or even physical health. It's very easy to fall into that trap. And I think the more successful students are the ones that have figured out how to make that balance. So maybe Professor Zhang, if you want to talk a little bit about some thoughts on what students can do to make sure that they're doing what they need to do here, but still taking care of themselves.
I do, but I do feel I just must respond to my colleagues.
I know.
I teach civil procedure.
Oh, no.
And all the things they're going to teach you in torts and contracts don't mean anything if there is no court that would allow you to enforce those rights. So just saying, what I'm going to teach you in civil procedure is how to go about righting a wrong. If someone takes your phone without being asked, or if someone hurts you with no excuse, there's no way you're going to get the remedy unless you know how to go to a court and get them to order the person to pay up or to fix their wrong. So that's another course you'll get to take in law school.
That was some schooling, by the way. I'm
That
just
was-
saying.
you did
That
get
was
us
some
on
good
that one.
schooling.
I mean, I tell my students though, it's not the most exciting class because we've created a very complex system of rules. So it won't be fun every day to learn it, but unless you learn it, when you go out there into the world, you may not be able to enforce some of these rights that you're learning about in your other classes. So that's my pitch there. All right, so work-life balance, super, super important. I think, it's still a work in progress for me, even as an established professional. But what's great about school is you get to figure it out. And it is hard work, as Dean Colhane said. You're going to need to work really hard to be successful and to grow into this great professional. That being said, you don't want to work too hard that you can't make it to the end of this long journey where you're going to pass the bar the first time and get a job and be successful. So my feeling is that, there really is this need to find some kind of balance in your life. As a law student, I tried as much as possible to take a complete day off from anything to do with law school. And I felt that was really important for me to take a step back, refresh my brain, remember that I was a complete human being and not just a law student. And I don't always do that now as a professor, but I think I still try to carve out times where I'm not thinking about law or my job. And so that's just really important. Finding a spot in your day, even, it doesn't have to be a whole day, but carving out some room to feed yourself as a whole human being. And whatever it looks like for you, it can take different forms, but that's going to be something that I hope you all hold dear throughout your journey through law school and after.
Are there things that any of you did in law school that to let off steam or to do
Yeah,
that?
so real quickly, I worked during law school, but it was like the perfect job for me. So I was, and I still am, always a swimmer. And so I was on my college swim team. I was captain of the team. Actually, my kids are now swimming in college. So that's sort of who we are, right? And so I would swim several times a week, but I was also coaching. I was lucky. My dad had a swim team and I was one of the coaches. And I made a little money doing that. And it was such a nice break. I would come home. I was commuting to law school in New York City from the suburbs to save money. I would come home. I would do my studying. I would go coach for a couple hours. I would come back and read the stuff over for the next day. And it was kind of built into my schedule. And I would swim as much as I could as well. It's really important in that work-life balance that you do some kind of physical exercise, right? Now we know whatever that is for you, right?
Mhm.
Pick one thing or maybe two things that really are important and do those regularly, because we know that if you are physically in shape and engaged, your brain actually works better. I mean, now we know this for sure, right? So even if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I should be studying, you're actually preparing your body in a way to be more receptive to what you're learning. So I really encourage everybody it'll seem sometimes like there isn't time, but there is, to do something. And swimming is kind of a production, right? But running, you just get out there, put on some shoes and go, right? Whatever it is you like, right? It could even be the treadmill, for God's sake, which is like the worst thing, right? But I'm not getting anywhere, but it's a metaphor, but do something.
I just would add, stay in positive relationships with other people that you can get
Mhm.
support and be supportive for. That's so incredibly important. And there's a really great opportunity. It just happens naturally in law school. And I'm sorry, we do call it trauma bonding, but we do. And you're going to find amazing friends here that are going to change your life and that will be your lifelong friends. And you're going to learn and grow. And that's so important for your well-being and your success, right? To belong to this community and to belong to, networks of people in the community.
Which is a great plug again for last night's event. Was so good, you guys. You gotta watch that video. They were so good. Dean Clark, did you have anything you wanted to add in terms of how you manage? You're good. Okay.
I think
So the next thing I want to talk about is for a lot of our students, and maybe for some of you here, the path to law school is not particularly linear. Most of our students aren't doing high school to college, college to law school. There's something else sort of in the path. And some of you kind of said that about your own paths were not the same. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how important is it for students coming in to know exactly what they hope to do with their law degree? Or how does that sort of evolve and happen over the course of their time here? How about Dean Clark? How do you answer that?
You know, when I started law school, I thought that I wanted to do international law. I was a political science major in undergrad, and so I really enjoyed just the study of international affairs. And I thought that's what I was going to do when I got to law school. And I recognized that what I thought about international law was not the experience that you have when you become a lawyer to do that work. And the area that I originally fell in love with, two areas. I love corporations. I just thought it was really engaging. The other reason I had a passion for that, I had an African-American male professor. And so just to see someone that looks like me that was at the front of the class, that was really exciting for me. And it was also exciting because there was this perception that some had that people that look like me couldn't do that type of work, that we weren't intelligent enough to practice in that area. So I had a chip on my shoulder in that class, and I worked really hard and I fell in love with it. Then the other piece of it is I like to read interesting stuff. So like some of you probably know of this website called World Star, and they have a lot of foolishness on there. And so I figured that if I am going to have to read a whole lot, I'd rather read about the salacious type of things that people do in the workplace, because it was super exciting. And so I had originally started off with in employment discrimination. And so that's how I developed a love for that area, even though it wasn't what I thought I would do when I got to law school.
Mm-hmm. How about Professor Colhane?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I went to law school with any clear idea of what I was going to do after law school. The only thing I knew was that I wanted to do something that was kind of broadly in the realm of service, but I didn't really know what that was or what I'd want to do. And so I took the path of least resistance to begin. After my clerkship, as I said, I worked for 3 years for a large firm, which was sort of the culture at my law school. I knew it wasn't something I wanted to do for a long time. And I remember speaking to the judge I was clerking for about something. And he said to me out of the blue, he said, well, you'll be in teaching within, 5 years. And I said, well, yeah, that makes sense. And it sort of dawned on me that that's what I really wanted to do. And it's not a kind of service that most people would necessarily think about in the same way that, maybe being an advocate for people that are unhoused or people that are struggling with, violations of their civil rights. It's not the same thing, but it's preparing the next generation of people to do those things. And I really found that kind of suited me best, and maybe had something to do with my mom being a teacher and how much she loved what she was doing and communicated that to all of us. So it just sort of evolved in this way. And obviously, as long as I've been here, I haven't had any second thoughts about it.
Mm-hmm. And that actually kind of leads into something else that I want to talk about, and something that Professor Zhang said earlier. Having read probably most of your applications, I know a lot of you are coming to law school with either a specific population that you want to serve, or there's a particular area of law that you're very passionate about, usually because of something in your own life, positive or negative. And it's hard, I think, in the first year, because you're taking contracts towards civil procedure, to kind of inject that passion into what you're doing. So I'm wondering if you can offer advice, and I'll ask you first, Professor Zhang, how a student can take that passion for what they have and incorporate it even beginning in their first year of law school.
Yeah, definitely. So I was one of those students that came into law school wanting to change the world, and then was like, I don't know how to do that, and also go to school and learn all these what seemed like arcane concepts at the time. And I think what's great about law schools, including ours, is that, you developing into a lawyer is not going to stop when you leave a classroom. And so many of our students, as has been mentioned earlier, are involved in all kinds of things in the community, so they can do the work they need to do to have the tools to help whoever they want to help, but also actually do that help. So I spent, I don't know, probably between 5 and 20 hours a week my entire time in law school doing pro bono family law. And that was life-giving for me. That helped me feel like I did what I wanted to do when I came to law school. And I know many of our students are also spending lots of time in our clinics and in their community work outside of the classroom, serving their communities and using the skills that they're learning. So we certainly have many of those opportunities here. And even in your classwork, I mean, we've talked about how professors here really are accessible. So I'll talk with my students both in and outside of the classroom about how their skills that they're learning in class relate to the kinds of work maybe you came to law school to do. And so we do really try to bridge that gap between learning these facts that need to stay in your head about the law and about how the law works, and then translating into what is that going to look like out into the real world. So there's both trying to integrate what we learn in the classroom, but also actually doing it through many opportunities that students have here.
Thank you. Dean Kelly, yes.
Yeah, I think that you can do something also where you can really develop your lawyering skills, which you are passionate about, and get some real world experience that then you can, have the skill set and some experience to help you get a job. And so we have a lot of experiential learning opportunities here. So you can be an extern, which means you go and you work, let's say, with a judge or perhaps a public interest organization. And then we also have clinics. So we have a lot of clinics. We have a human dignity rights clinic. We have a criminal defense clinic. We have a
Veterans.
veterans clinic. We have a civil defense clinic for Delaware, which focuses on helping survivors of domestic violence. Environmental clinic. So I think we've got at least 7, and maybe we're coming up to number 8 pretty soon. So it's really a fantastic opportunity to do service learning, right? You're learning and developing your skills and also helping other people. And so you can find ways to reach your, pursue your passions while you're in class. There's lots of opportunities for that too.
Great, thank you. I'm glad that you said that. I think it's important because, again, so many of our students come in with this passion for something, and it can be sometimes lost when you're trying to learn the intricacies of contract law, civil procedure, property, all of those things. So I appreciate that. So Dean Culhane, you talked a little bit earlier about torts. We know now it's not a dessert, or not just a dessert, but it is a first-year required class that everybody takes here. I think you taught first-year torts this past year. And he may be your first-year torts professor this fall, who knows? Can you talk a little bit about what the first-year class looks like, how you teach, and what your expectations are of students in their first semester?
Yeah, and a lot of what I'm going to say, I think, will apply not only to torts, but to all of the first semester, first-year courses. So what we're trying to do in the first semester is a couple of things. One, obviously, we're trying to teach you the law of whatever it is, torts, property, contracts. But we're also kind of trying to get you to, I know this is a cliche and it has maybe a negative resonance to it, but to think like a lawyer, to really kind of understand how to make your arguments, how to make effective arguments, how to recognize an effective argument versus one that really doesn't hang together too well. And so in the first semester, let's say I've got 50 students. I will call on students without them having volunteered, because I want to encourage everyone, encourage is a good word here, to be prepared but it's not just that, it's to become more comfortable with being engaged, right? And so what we'll do is ask a series of questions about a particular case, or maybe not about a case. Maybe we'll give you a hypothetical situation that relates to a case that you were assigned. And then we have kind of a conversation that starts about the case. And what happens, at least in my class, and I think this is fairly typical, is the student will answer a couple of questions, a number of questions, and then we'll bring other students into the conversation, right? So that before long, there's kind of this robust discussion that's happening throughout the class. And at the end of each, unit, I will summarize what we've done to make sure everyone has sort of gotten the point, right? I use a lot of videos and visual aids in my class because torts can be really exciting. I don't know, there was a week ago, did you see this video of the track race where this woman had a baton and she struck some other woman in the head while they were coming around to exchange? And I showed it in my Torts 2 class, even though it's not a subject we cover in that class. And it engendered a really good discussion about, had she done this on purpose? If she had done it by mistake, should she be accountable for that? Or is that part of the risk of running a race? So there's all kinds of things that you can bring into a classroom that kind of enhance the experience. And as Dean Clark said, put it in a real world context that shows them why these things matter outside of the classroom. The other thing you should know is that we were kind of ahead of the curve when it comes to giving students opportunities during the semester to show kind of where they are and to show us where you are. So we'll have multiple assessments, which are kind of low stakes, but they do count. So maybe we'll have a multiple choice, and then we'll have an essay assessment during the semester so that you have a sense as you go through the semester, right, of where you are, so that when the final exam comes around, you should be pretty well prepared and pretty well grounded in understanding the material. When I was in law school back in the dark ages, my torts class, for instance, was a full year course. We had one test at the end of the entire year in May, and the course started in August. So no practice, and we do plenty of practice questions with students, right? To give you kind of the tools that you need to be successful, instead of perhaps guessing what you might need to do on a final exam to be successful. It's a whole different model. It puts a little more pressure on you during this semester, but it really pays dividends. And I've seen the change from the first half of my career here, where we didn't do that, to the second half where we have. And you just get better and more thoughtful responses on the final exam that way. So it makes sense. It's more work for us. It's more work for the students. But if the goal is to be successful on the bar exam and to go into practice, being ready, I'm 100% convinced that this is the way to go.
Great, thank you so much. So you all have been so patient while I ask my questions. Hopefully what you've learned so far is that these individuals are huge wealths of information and here to make sure that you do this right. Are there any questions from any of you that you want to ask our professors? I have student ambassadors with microphones. Just since we are recording, I want to make sure that anybody who asks a question is on a microphone. So we'll have one in each row. If you could just raise your hand if you have a question, and then the students will come to you. Renata, we have a student right in front of you there.
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I wanted to see, can you guys further explain how the curve works here at the law school?
Mm-hmm.
That's basically my question.
Dean Kelly, do you want to like that?
Yep. So I'm the vice dean for academic affairs, so I'm like the curve woman. So the curve is meant to have a level playing field for all students to evaluate their performance. It's not meant to punish people. It's not meant to give unfair grades. It's meant to kind of discipline the faculty completely, frankly, because you don't want to be a person who goes to a faculty member and you happen to have gotten assigned to that person for contracts who doesn't think anyone ever does work good enough. And you don't want to go. And then we used to, when I was in law school, we would post grades on grades by your name on the door.
Wow.
Yep. And we would go all to the doors of the faculty and we'd be like, well, oh, look at all the A's for that person. That's the class I want to take, right? So that's the purpose of the curve, is to make sure that there is kind of a standard that we're applying across the board to our students, and that it's fair across the board to everybody. There's not some people who are stronger or weaker graders. Sometimes students will complain about the curve because they think they're getting forced to take a grade that they didn't earn. And I can tell you, I've taught first year property law, first year property law for more than 20 years. And, the grades are I'm assessing your performance on the exam, and that's what I'm doing. And that's what the grade is doing. And if there is the curve, if you don't feel like what your grades are doing is going to be accurately assessing your students' performances, then you can ask, this is my job, to ask me for a deviation from the curve. And I'll give you a deviation for the curve as long as you can justify it. And so I have had a very few occasions where I have asked for a deviation of the curve myself. I've asked for it to be curved up, like let me go higher in the curve for one time, and I've asked for it to be lower, probably more times than one. So it's meant to be accurate grading. And
Thank you. Any other questions we have? Oh, right there.
Yes, I've heard a lot about, coming out and, finishing law school and getting a job. But what if you have no desire to ever work for someone? You want to start your own practice as an attorney? How do you help them, or can you help them? That's what I want to know.
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely. I think it's funny you should say that. My partner, she is a entrepreneur, and I was talking to our dean of admissions about putting together a panel of practitioners that went out and did their own thing. Like, I think it's really amazing what some solo practitioners are doing. In fact, we brought one here. Jordan Strakovsky, one of our former graduates, he went out. He knew that he wanted to do private practice and start his own firm. And probably about a year and a half ago, he settled he got the verdict in the largest case against what was the medical malpractice case at Temple Hospital, and it was like 19 or $20 million, if I remember correctly. And that was one of our alums. So part of it is just continuing to expose people to those opportunities. The other thing that we did was Dean Kelly and I, was it in the fall when I had Maggie teach the law office practice management course, and you put that on the schedule. That is a course that was really designed for people that wanted to go out and hang their own shingle. But I also want to do more around that. Like, I think utilizing social media, that's one of the things that I'm seeing my partner do now, and she is really killing it. I mean, and part of it is it's not going to work for the law firm because the numbers that she's making are more than the ones that I told you about. So I think you get that. And so there's a pathway and opportunity. And we do have a number of alum that have hung their own shingle and are doing very, very well for themselves.
Yeah, that's one of the amazing things about having a law degree is you really can. If you want to be on your own and practice law, that's an option, right? And if you want to have just one or two partners, that's an option. I would say we don't usually give advice to people who are just graduating from law school to put out their shingle by themselves, because there's still a lot of learning that needs to happen, and to have experience, representing clients and having somebody who is more senior, who has been through and has a lot more experience and insight. So we typically say, like, spend a few years, really getting support and guidance and mentorship from, be in a small practice or whatever it might be. And then you're in a better position to do that.
Yeah, and you can also, in your summers during law school and maybe through an externship, find someone who's a good mentor to you at a firm, or let's say in a hospital or some corporation that you might be interested in going to work for after graduation. And that gives you kind of a nice flying start into the practice of law as well.
And Professor Harrington Connor and Killian are outside in the Main Street at the externship table. So I would talk to them as well, because they can probably give some thoughts on what students are currently doing if that's the direction they want to go in. It's a great question. Other questions? I have one here, and then Suchita, we have one down here. I want to make sure Suchita gets her steps in as well. White sweater here. And
Did you see this hand too, Erin?
I did not. We'll have these two, and then we'll go to you next, sir. The black jacket right here, Renata.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
So it seems that you all came from different states. You graduated from working in different states. So what brought you to Delaware law specifically?
Oh, how about, since you're our newest member on the panel?
I mean, this community is really special. So I went to a different law school. I worked at a different law school just before, but the people here are humble and are dedicated to your success. You will unfortunately learn that law as a field it still feels kind of hierarchical, feels kind of cliquey. There's still elements of the old boys club. Delaware law does not have that. And that's really unique and special, where I can't really think of any particular person that has that kind of old school vibe about them here in this building. And so I think that's really important to me as a human being. And I think it makes a huge difference for our students who, you are coming to this place wanting to learn. And I don't think you need any of those unnecessary barriers in your way.
Great. Professor Colhane, do you remember why you came to Delaware? As the quest was cooling on the Brontosaurus Express, apparently.
Yeah, I took the Brontosaurus Express here, where Fred Flintstone with my feet as brakes on the car. I don't remember much about the process, but I will say that Part of it for me was geographical. I've got family in sort of the mid-Atlantic in New York where I grew up. But as the place has changed and evolved since I've been here, I would just echo what Professor Zhang has said about, how kind of sort of deliberately non-hierarchical we are. And it really is such a breath of fresh air, because I can tell you there's still a lot of that, particularly in the legal academy, right? Particularly among law professors. And when we go out, I've been on the hiring committee, and when we go out looking for people, we're kind of less concerned with what law school they went to, but what did they do, right? Once they were there, were they successful as students, obviously, but what did they contribute to their community? What have they done since law school? Whether they have some teaching experience that would really help our students. So we're looking at candidates in the most holistic way. And I think that really has benefited the students and the entire law school community.
Mhm. Great question. The gentleman here.
Yep. All right, I have 4 questions, so I'll try and make them quick. Dean Kelly, what resources are in place for helping students obtain summer internships, especially for those that are trying to apply to firms that are very competitive?
Yeah, so we have my colleague Dana Harrington Connor is out, and you can talk to her more specifically, but she is an absolute dynamo of energy for trying to get as many opportunities. So we are going out and talking to judges and talking to law firms and talking to nonprofit organizations and government organizations and saying will you take our students? And she's very, very connected, especially in Delaware. And so people come up to her and say, we'll take your students. So we're really building a breadth and a depth of opportunities out there for our students. And we want our students to take these experiences, because you learn so much on the job, but you also can make a great network for getting a job, right? It is the pathway to skills and the pathway to network.
And I want to add one more thing to that. In addition to Dean Harrington, we also have Dean McDonald, who is our Assistant Dean of Career Services, and she's new to the law school. She began at the beginning of this academic year, and she has been phenomenal. If you ask any of our students about Dean McDonald, she will reach out. She's very proactive in helping you put together your application materials. She's just been a wonderful resource. She's working very hard to develop new relationships and pathways to open up doors for our students, and she's just been really, really supportive. So I think you're going to have a community here of people that will be willing to work with you. I also think that our faculty are just great resources, because if you have an interest that aligns with the faculty interest, the other day, John called me about a student. He's like, Todd, my research assistant needs a job. And I said, okay, John, let's see what we can do. And I reached out to someone and we created an opportunity. The student ultimately decided to take something else, but we were working very closely. And part of the reason that we were willing to go to bat, that student worked really, really hard as well. I mean, we're going to work for all of our students, but if you come here and do what you're supposed to, you will have opportunities.
Thank you.
All right, and Professor Colleen, what accommodations are offered for students with disabilities? And aside from forming study groups or attending office hours, what sort of resources the faculty offer students that may be struggling in the classes?
So I take the accommodations one. So we have the university has a student accommodations office where you go and ask for an accommodation, and you have to fill out the paperwork and demonstrate that you need that. And so that's, and then that will happen, right? Whatever you need is what you're going to get. So we're very sensitive to that. There's we actually are seeing a very significant increase in students who need accommodations, and including on the bar exam. And so it's all good. You just, do what you need to do. And we're here to support all of our students in every way possible. And then his was about,
What was the second part?
Aside from students forming study groups and attending office hours, what sort of resources does the faculty offer for students that may be?
Well, I mean, let me start with office hours. So we all have office hours, first of all, and some faculty find that students are likelier to appear if it's a Zoom office hour. I like being in my office in person for office hours, but I also offer, as kind of a supplement, I offer Zoom hours, particularly if we're about to have an assessment, right? So I've been known to, on a Saturday or a Sunday, say I'm going to set aside this 2-hour block because I know everyone should be available. And, I'm on Zoom. Anybody can just pop in and ask any questions before the assessment. So in addition to my regular office hours, each week, I will have these kind of sort of pop-up office hours that will take place. And then in terms of study groups, that kind of comes organically from the students. Students form study groups of very small study groups, larger study groups. And a lot of that is just kind of affinities that you have with different people, you know, as you go through the first year and beyond. When I was a first year law student, I was in a very large study group for the first few months, and then I realized it wasn't working for me. And so I got into a much smaller study group of just a couple of us. So a lot of that is just what you prefer in terms of, you know, collaboration. Some people are more collaborative than others, but I think there's value in it. Just like there's value in the whole classroom experience of being engaged with all of your fellow students and the professor, there's a tremendous value in being engaged with your fellow students in study groups to kind of see what you understand and don't understand. And sometimes I'll have an entire study group that will show up during my office hours because they were batting something around and they were disagreeing. And so they'll come to me and say, well, what do you think about this? You know, and that can be really valuable for all, including for me, because it might even be something I hadn't thought about.
And I'll just add one more thing to that. Not only that, do you have the faculty, but you also have a lot of support from peers. Like, I think our students do a wonderful job of providing peer support to our students. For example, our Latin Law Student Association last year, last fall, hosted a series of events where they asked professors to put together exams. They gave a practice exam. They asked professors to come and give a diagnostic on the exam and give feedback to the students. And those are really, really great sessions. And a number of students remarked to me how grateful they were that opportunity was put together for them. So you'll find a lot of support from your fellow peers. And I would also echo what Dean Culhane said about just faculty being available. I have a conference room upstairs, and I'm not even allowed to use it now because the faculty take over the conference room and they bring their study group session with the students and kick me out of the conference room. And that's a great thing because that just shows how engaging our faculty are with our students here.
I just wanted to add one quick thing, which is many of us also use teaching assistants, and I do. And so that's another resource that you do have.
Mm-hmm. All right, and this last one for Dean Clark. So I think you guys did a good job for as they're pitching, or I guess answering the question of why I guess a student should attend Widener Law. What's something I guess unique here at Widener that you typically don't see offered at other law schools?
Oh, that's a good one. So we have, remember I was telling you that there's a whole bunch of things, but I'm gonna tell you from my vantage point. And so my vantage point is like contracts and corporate law. And so we have this opportunity. Remember I was telling you it's the second most powerful court structure in the world. So part of that is the Delaware Court of Chancery. And so many of you remember the Elon Musk decision, right? After Elon Musk, he had a $55 billion compensation package that was denied by Chancellor McCormick. About 5 days after that, that conference room that I tell you that they steal from me all the time, Chancellor McCormick was in that conference room where we were just having a just casual conversation about the students at Delaware Law School. And so we actually this year have expanded, which is the top honor that you can get here at Delaware Law School is to become a Walcott Fellow. We send 5 students to go work with the Delaware Supreme Court for an entire year, their 3rd year, and 5 students to the Delaware Court of Chancery. There is no other law school in the country that can claim that they're sending that many students to the Delaware Court of Chancery. And that is the credential if you want to do corporate law. And the second piece of that, before I took the position, I was looking at the courses that we offered here at Delaware Law School. And when you get into corporations, you study this concept called fiduciary duties. And fiduciary duties are constantly changing and they're contingent upon the posture, the situation that the company is in. And we offer a course called Fiduciary Duties During Insolvency. And so you could come to Delaware Law School and take some really, really amazing classes. We have members of the Delaware Court of Chancery, members of the Delaware Supreme Court, and we have federal judges that regularly teach courses here every semester. And I think that's what makes us very, very special.
Mm-hmm. And then I think you had a question over here.
Corporate law is not the only thing. You know what I teach? The most important subjects, right? It's, the law of everyday life. So family law, property law, like leases, real estate transactions, elder law, and also to teach you how to be effective learners.
I think next year's panel, we're gonna have a big ring. We have to all just fight it out. So yes.
My name's Rob. I'm a admitted student, and I put in my deposit, so you don't have to win me over.
Good deal.
I'm ready. I'm excited for coming in August. My question is for the entire panel. I'm interested in pursuing trial work. I want to be either a civil litigator or a criminal defense attorney. I'm particularly interested in working with indigent clients. Could you just kind of map the pathway for an extended division student? How do they get from here to trial work?
It's a great question.
Great question.
So we have an enormous amount of like litigation skills development courses. And then I think definitely if you can get your, like, it's harder for evening students to do the clinic work because the clinic work is usually like if you're with a judge, the judge is working during the hours when the court's open, but we do have some clinics that are specifically for evening students, and we're actually adding even more. So you want to make sure you're getting experience. But we have lots and lots of classes that do this. We also have like what we call co-curricular activities like moot court. So you could actually be doing oral arguments as part of a team and in competitions. We have a trial team. We have a program called ITAP, which is Introduction to the Trial Advocacy Program. It's a 7-day intensive where all lawyers and judges come and just like you're simulating trial work for that entire period of time. So there's lots and lots of opportunities.
Thank you.
I think because we're actually a minute over time. There'll be opportunities to chat with students. Oh,
Was that one more?
Renata was making it.
Yeah,
We'll let you ask the last question. Renata was already making her way. So
Thank you. My name is James Elliott, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us today and share this information. So my question is about the faculty and the culture towards working with students. I'm a father, as well as I take care of a caregiver for my elderly parent. And so when life happens, how do the professors respond to that? How willing are you to work with your students?
Yeah, I've run a couple of times. I've run sort of a nursery school. I had one day where a student who was really near the top of the class, her childcare fell through, right? And so she said, "Can I bring my son to class and he'll be good?" And he's just sort of sat, and he was somewhat good. He was 4, so he had some energy, right? But we try to be as accommodating as possible. Sometimes students just have to miss a class because they have other duties that come about, and I'll sort of work with a student under certain circumstances. I'll record the class so a student can, watch if I think the excuse is a valid excuse. Each professor may have a different approach to that. And a large part of it is making yourself available to students. If a student tells me they're not going to be there, maybe they're an evening student that has a work responsibility that comes up, or a full-time, whatever the case may be, I always make sure to say to the student, come in during office hours or set up a Zoom appointment so we can go over what you missed, so that we make sure that you're on track, things like that. So you want to minimize those situations, but they're going to happen, right? If I have an elderly parent, and my kids are in college, and it's a little easier when your kids are already out of the house. But, with my mom, I had to go down there all of a sudden. She got sick. Things happen. And so we're empathetic to it because we're experiencing similar things. So we try to be as accommodating as possible within the bounds of making sure that you're getting the classroom time that you need.
And I'll also piggyback off of that. I mean, I think we have a very favorable attendance policy to the extent that if that happens, you don't have to prove why you were away. You can miss up to 20% of the class before you would be deemed to be academically dismissed. And I think we probably all can agree, if you miss more than that, especially at this level, you would be in trouble. And so if you miss 2, 3, 4 classes, depending on the number of credits, you're fine. The other thing about that I think is really important, if you miss 2, 3 classes, one of these professors is going to be reaching out to you. Dean Kelly is going to be reaching out to you, because we want you to be successful. We don't want to bring in any student that will not graduate and pass the bar the first time. So once you decide to attend Delaware Law School, we're locked in. And our primary objective is to make sure you pass the first time and that we get you a job.
And I would say, just make sure you talk to us. I mean, You're right. We don't necessarily pry into why you might be missing a class, but it can sometimes help if you say, look, I've got this situation. Let's see if we can work out some kind of accommodation, right?
Great, thank you. So I want to have each of you have a chance to give us a last word before we break, and students are able to talk to you about it in the hallway as well if you want to continue the conversation. But in 30 seconds or less, I'm going to ask each of you, I'm going to start with Professor Zhang and then work our way down. If you could go back in time and give in 30 seconds a piece of advice to your 1L self, I think that would be helpful advice for our students today. What would you tell young Margaret 1L?
I mean, I love law school, so I would definitely repeat it in a minute. But what I loved was just really diving into the experience and giving it your all. You will get what you put in. And so to the extent you're committed, you're engaged, this school will give you that back in dividends.
Thank you.
I agree with Margaret. I mean, I think that law school changed my life. And the most amazing experience you have as a law student is your first year of law school. It's going to completely change the way that you think. And so I encourage all of you that when you begin your law school studies, you give it everything that you got, because your first year of law school, believe it or not, will largely influence your first job. And that first job does have an impact on your career trajectory. So I encourage you to give it everything you got. So if you have the ability to kind of step away from some things in order to put everything you have into that experience, it will pay dividends for you in the future.
All right, hop into that time machine, John.
Make good friends.
Yeah.
Keep your eyes open to what's going on around you, in every sense of that, and you'll be happy and successful.
And finally, young Alicia, what advice do you have for her?
So think of yourself on your first day of law school as a person who is now a lawyer in training, and stop thinking of yourself as a student. Think of yourself as a professional who's developing in a professional way. And all the things that you're doing and the work that you're doing, the work ethic that you have, the relationships that you're building, the networking that you're doing, like you're going to find friends who you probably will practice law with. Maybe you'll open up a small firm, with your dear friend, and that's an amazing experience. So remember that it's the moment you get here, you're already in transition, right? You're no longer a student, you're a soon-to-be lawyer.
Great, great advice. Can you guys all join me in thanking our professors here today? You guys are. We'll have you head outside. And they'll be outside in the hallway, but Dean Gardner has a couple
I
announcements
just
to make.
want to, and please a big round of applause to Eric Niskern for facilitating such a
You do.
wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
I'm going to have our faculty and our deans head out to the atrium where they will see you shortly. But I did want to just let you all know, I know we're running just slightly over, but I did think this was an important conversation. I didn't want to interrupt. So please feel free to, like I said, join our faculty, our other staff out in the hallway to kind of mix and mingle. And then if anyone would like to take a tour, you want to make your way over to the registration student ambassador table that was at the top of Main Street here. We'll take off for tours probably in the next 10 minutes or so. Thanks so much.